Old school. Let's just go with old school. Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today, and for this video we are going to be doing an author taste test for Amanda Foody. Alright, before we get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments if you read any of her work and what is your favorite if you have. Okay, so welcome to another round of an author taste test. Usually all that is required for me to do this is that I have 2 or more of this author's works on my TBR. And Amanda Foody, I think I have like 5. Okay, that might be overshooting a little bit. I at least have 3. Usually, anytime I try out a new author, I tend to give them 2 shots, and if both of those books go poorly, chances are I will never pick up anything else by them. So this time around, for Amanda Foody, first up from my physical TBR, I actually grabbed 𝗖cieះ𝘁𝘁. This one is actually the start of a trilogy, and specifically in a world very reminiscent to like Las Vegas. It's very casino based. When we are following N, who is traveling to the city of Sin in order to find her adoptive mother who has been missing for quite some time. The only instruction her mother left for her was that if you haven't heard from her, she's probably dead. But if you want to try and find her, go to 𝗖cieះ𝘁𝘁. I was close. Well, N does just that, but unfortunately, she is not expecting 𝗖cie to actually be the head of a gang in this city. 𝗖cie ends up agreeing to help her try and find her mom for a price because he is in the middle of a lot of dramatic and scary things. Being completely honest with you guys, the aesthetic of this book was actually what originally drew me to it. The house of cards, the background with all of the card suit, and then the artwork that goes over every chapter. I actually ended up buddy reading this with Marley, but we're not here for me to give you a review quite yet. On the opposite side, I'm actually going to be picking up Amanda Foody's first book, Daughter of the Burning City. In this one, we are following this young girl, Serena, who lives in what is basically a traveling circus town. And she actually is an illusion worker. She creates these full-blown personified humanoid illusions. However, she's very confused and heartbroken when one of her illusions actually ends up being murdered. Because she has essentially created a family for herself with these illusions, of course she wants to try and find the person responsible for this, and ends up enlisting the help of Luca, who is a newcomer to the circus city. It's also an important element to mention that Serena is the proprietor's daughter. Alright, so that's it for now. I will update you guys again when I hit the halfway point into 𝗖cieះ𝘁𝘁𝗁. Hey y'all, so I have hit the halfway point into 𝗖cieះ𝘁𝘁𝗁 by Amanda Foody, and thus far, my feelings on Amanda Foody's writing are conflicting. So first off, I have to say, I really like this world. It's Las Vegas. It is a fantastical Las Vegas. We know there are other portions of the country that don't fit that vibe, but seeing as how majority of the story so far has taken place in New Reigns, the Sin City alone, yeah, it's Las Vegas. I love the aesthetic of the world because of it. I love the little details on the book to tie in with that. I also have to say that the magic style is unique. It's not the most original thing I've ever seen. Basically in this world, everybody has powers that come from both parents' lineages. So you have one talent that you're better at, and then you have a secondary talent. Our female main character in this N has a arithmetic talent and a dancing talent, but she is definitely a lot better at her dancing talent. But even with that, different families have different levels. So she is considered a 𝗖lte, which while they do have a dancing ability, is still lower class than some of the other dancing families. That's really cool and all, but one issue I do have with it is the different kinds of talents are never really explained. We kind of just learn about them as we go. So N has arithmetic and dancing. 𝗖cie has orb making, which orbs are these like glass things that you can use to carry volts, which volts are this world's version of money. He also has a talent for seeing a person's aura, but he's not particularly good at that one. He has to be very close to somebody personally before he can actually feel and see their aura. There's a background person who has a fighting one. There's another character who has this ability to tie somebody to them so that that person must do what they want. There's acrobat talents, there's gymnast talents. It's just very funky because some of them are almost magical and then others seem like they're pretty normal, and I want to better understand what all the different talents there are. I wish the author would dive more into that. Also, another problem I have with this world is Foody uses made-up swear words, which I have a love-hate relationship with because in some scenarios, in some worlds. I get them, I understand them, I see what the author was doing there. And I get why the author did it here, because it feels a lot more fantastical. It really separates this from the real world, especially when your setting feels so true to Las Vegas. They're so corny. Every time I read one, I kind of chuckle and it takes me out of the story. I just can't take them seriously. Muck is one that gets used a lot, which I think you can figure out what that's going for. They're just silly, in my opinion. Characters, which is something that usually means a great deal to me. Not doing great here. Levi, our male main character, is a bisexual Kaz Brekker ripoff. If you're unaware, Kaz Brekker is one of the main characters in 𝗖cieých𝘁𝘁. I wasn't particularly sold with Kaz being a mob boss at 18, and I'm not very sold on Levi being a street lord at 17. It's even more unbelievable because we're told he only got to the city at like 12. So apparently this man is supposed to have taken over an entire gang in 5 years as a teenager. I do appreciate the fact that we do get some actual representation of Levi's sexuality on page. It's not just something that is mentioned and never looked at again. It's continuously brought up that he checks out men and women. And of course, there is a romance brewing between him and N, and I have no feelings about it at all. I don't care. Though I will say, with N, I find it refreshing that she's not your stereotypical YA fantasy heroine. She's pretty naive, she's really innocent, she does not know what she's doing. Honestly, she's not really remarkable in any particular way, which I guess is kind of interesting because it pushes so much against the chosen one, best of their craft sort of characters we get a lot in YA fantasies. I do think she's very well created and she has a lot of depth to her. I don't know if I quite feel that way about Levi. I think N's a little bit better created than him, but even with that, I don't really feel any attachment to her either. I do like, though, in her perspective, anytime we're learning about the world, it's a little bit more explained because she's not actually from New Reigns. She's from a different country in this world, which apparently is sort of Edwardian. Maybe not Edwardian, but like old school. Let's just go with old school. As far as the plot goes, there are two major things that are really driving this story thus far. And the whole reason she traveled to New Reigns was in order to find her adoptive mother. Levi agrees to help her because she says she'll pay him, and he is desperate for Volts to pay back this big mob guy. And yeah, that element definitely feels very like Rat Pack Las Vegas, and I do like it, but at the same time, like, there's not really a way to develop it apart from watching Levi make money, so that's not super exciting. And then with N trying to find her mother, we're learning more and more that N really doesn't know her mother as well as she thought she did. Apparently, her mother actually has ties to what was the losing side in a civil war 25 years prior. And the more she investigates into her mother's disappearance, the more she also learns that she may not know herself as well as she thinks. And that's interesting, but it does sort of lean into like that whole the last princess trope, and I don't know how big a fan I am of that either. There's enough going on in this book to keep me engaged and want to keep reading, but I really wouldn't say this is a standout YA fantasy for me. Right now, I'm estimating like 3 stars, maybe 3.5, depending on how the plots develop and if there's some fun excitement in the latter half of the book, because I have heard that apparently Foody does write like fight scenes very well. I'm not super sold on this, and that is a shame. Hey y'all, so I officially finished out 𝗖cie iš by Amanda Foody, and this was an experience. This just wasn't a satisfying ending, and I have no idea where things are going to go from here. I have no clue of how the series is going to progress forward. I think my favorite part of this book on the whole was the atmosphere, the aesthetic that went throughout the story. I think the author did a phenomenal job of consistently sticking true to the Sin City theme. I love by the end of the book that we were able to see how the city has actually affected N and how it has changed her character, how her entire experience of trying to find her mother and living within the city, almost being a member of a gang, interacting with all of these people she has changed her so much from the prim and proper girl who came. That was fantastic, I will say, especially when it came to the climax scenes. Wow, I did not expect this to take some of those turns. But prior to it, when we were on the lead up, when we're slowly making our way to the climax, there were some events that occurred that I think the author was doing to try and take us off guard, but I saw every one of them coming. Once the climax started though, I was reinvested, but there's this major event that takes place and I'm still not really sure I know what happened there. The author explains it to you, but she did so in a way where like I I didn't feel like I truly understood what was going on. So it made that situation a little less suspenseful because I was trying to figure out, like, okay, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Like, how are we moving through? I still am not sold on the brewing romance between Levi and N. You can definitely tell these two have feelings for each other from very early on, and by the end of the book, it's kind of like neither of them are acknowledging these because they think things will change. So much has changed already at this point. Just acknowledge it. Like, just talk about it. You guys have lived through so much together by this point. I don't understand why you're not saying anything. But again, I also wasn't convinced by it, so I don't care that deeply. I did feel a slight bit of tension between these two right at the end, but like I said, it's as though the book just suddenly ends. Then the epilogue is, I guess, relating to the events of the next book, but because I don't really understand what happened at the end of this one, I don't really get the implications of what that's setting up. I don't understand how they're relating to the events we've just watched unfold, so why should I care to pick up 2 more books that are pushing 500 pages for this? Yeah, so like my final compile breakdown came out to 3.5 stars on this. It was fine, and I'm sure once upon a time this was like really great and definitely stood out in regards to YA fantasy. Not so much now. The world itself is the most interesting thing, but even now I still don't fully understand the magic system, and that definitely annoys me. Hey guys, so I have hit the halfway point into The Daughter of the Burning City, and first off, did not realize that apparently this was actually Amanda Foody's debut, but I have to say, by this point, I'm actually pretty impressed. From the basic synopsis, I was expecting essentially a fantastical murder mystery. I honestly didn't really understand how, you know, an illusion could be murdered, and I didn't really get the importance and the impact behind that until I actually started into the book, so I do just want to explain that a little bit. These illusions of Serena's, they do in fact come to life, not just in that, you know, she waves her hand and creates something pretty like an image. She literally creates a living being out of her mind. They're all fully fleshed, or barked, technically in one case, individuals who have their own whims, have their own interests, their own issues. It's very interesting. And with that, they also have their own abnormalities that manage to make them fit alongside Serena, seeing as how she doesn't have eyes. Because of that, she has essentially created a freak show that she performs with all of these illusions. She's made her own little family. And that's why one of them dying is so much more emotionally impactful to the story. But I will say that that doesn't mean that all of these illusion characters actually stand out. I'm still having a hard time keeping them all straight, understanding who's who. Really, if anything, I'm more identifying them based on the abilities, the abnormalities that they have. And because of that, I think she might have done herself a disservice by not cutting down the cast a little bit, because it's not as though those are the only people we're watching. There are outside characters from this little family as well that are just as important. However, I can say between this book and Ace of Shades, I do think that Foody comes up with some pretty original fantasy worlds that have basis in real life actual settings, and then pretty original magic systems to go with them. So the Burning City, or Gomorrah as it's actually known, is literally a traveling city sort of reminiscent to a circus. I couldn't help but liken it to the Night Circus, honestly. I definitely think the Night Circus is a lot more magical and whimsical than this one, but this does have similar vibes to it. It's really interesting. It has its own socioeconomic breakdown, it has different neighborhoods, the way the entire thing travels is very fascinating. They have their own cultures as well. Majority of citizens within the city actually have abilities called jinx magic, with each of these people having some sort of a speciality. Many of them tend to fall in one of 3 categories, but there are individuals like Serena who are more unusual, who have really niche abilities that aren't seen very often, or literally only ever seen with that one individual, sort of like our other character Luca, who claims himself a poison jinx. The majority of these individuals utilize their abilities to perform for their clientele. Since it does have the basis of something reminiscent to a circus, they do tend to travel around to different cities and stay there for a short amount of time, perform for the people that come to see them, make things for them, or other things for them. But across the board, I've just been really fascinated by the city. I think it's really interesting. It's very original. It has its own history, its own background, its importance in the world. And with that, I do want to talk about the fact that I understand why Foody elaborated more on the world itself outside of Gomorrah to explain the importance of the city to everyone else, the issue that these people's magic abilities causes in the world, and why they tend to be driven to Gomorrah. But I just don't really care about any of that, and really none of it feels as important to the story as everything we've learned about Gomorrah proper. 𝗖cie herself as a character is fine, but I am getting kind of tired of her constantly talking down on herself. Oh, I'm not pretty because I don't have eyes. Oh, I'm not that smart. Oh, my father just felt pity on me and that's why he adopted me. Oh, the other people around here don't really respect me. Like, she's constantly just talking herself down. And God, I mean, I get it. She's 16, but like, come on, dude. You literally make things come to life. That's pretty fascinating. She's also bisexual, which is pretty cool. And there's clearly some sort of a romantic interest in Luka, but by this point, it's more like she just finds him attractive, but apart from that, she thinks he's really annoying. So on one hand, do I think this book is doing a lot better than 𝗖cie of Shades was at the halfway point? No. But I like the world in this one a lot more, and so I think that alone is going to make my estimated rating of 4 stars. The murder mystery element is also pretty intriguing, and I currently have absolutely no idea on who it could actually be, which I guess is the other fact that's keeping me invested. But hello again, folks. So yeah, I forgot to film an intro until now, when I'm closing this video out. I have officially finished out Daughter of the Burning City, and you know how I said I didn't really care about the external world building and the little bit of politics that had been introduced to us. They just weren't really engaging me. Yeah, of course, those elements both really took over in the latter half, and rather than this being a mystery, it started to become more of a political scheming story. A specific element regarding that started to become more and more prevalent as the story went on, which it wasn't the most subtle thing. Because of that, it made that element of the mystery very easy to guess. And then, unfortunately, that angle of the story also made the perpetrator very predictable as well. And due to that, my intrigue just basically plummeted. This was worsened by the fact that once we figured out who that person was, they kind of did the whole Bond villain monologuing, explaining all of the backstory to why they're doing this. And then, you know, a really fast wrapped up conclusion, which that's just not really satisfying. I still didn't really feel particularly strong about the characters in this book in any regard. Honestly, the further in I got, 𝗖cie drove me more and more crazy. She's just constantly doubting herself. She's calling herself names. She's talking down to herself. She assumes everyone around her is treating her poorly purely due to her looks. I get it, like, she's a 16-year-old, she's very self-conscious, but good lord, there are so many bigger issues going on in the story. It just felt like wasted page time. Luka, our love interest character, did start to intrigue me more as the book went on, but I still felt like he was a bit underdeveloped. And then along with that, I do think it was cool that the author added some asexuality representation with him. I suppose as a couple they were kind of cute, but there's this like really dramatic turn right around the climax that, I mean, it was so out of nowhere, it gave me whiplash. Unfortunately, I think this just kind of fell apart for me in the latter half. My rating came out to about 3.5 stars. This just became a little bit too big for the story, in my opinion. I think rather the author should have focused on like a fantastical murder mystery, and it would have been much more engaging. Wrapping up this video, would I read something else from Amanda Foody? Probably, but it's just like not at the top of my list in terms of priorities. These books were fine. I think she definitely excels in world building. She has very interesting magic systems, particularly since she bases a lot of her world building and magic systems in real world elements. Her characters don't really do anything for me personally, and I think her plots she just sort of overdevelops for my taste. This wasn't a bad author taste test, but it was very middle of the road in comparison to like my last one with Nina LaCour. Alright y'all, so that is it for today. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. I have all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me linked in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!